located near the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the center of Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, lied the Shepherd Hotel, a heritage symbol for Palestinians, now destroyed by Israel as part of their ongoing effort to Judaize Al-Quds.
Israel has demolished a historic Palestinian hotel in East Jerusalem, Al-Quds, despite growing international opposition.
After the 1967 war, when Israel occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, it was confiscated by the Israeli government under the infamous Absentee Property Law. Under this law, which is simply a device for the theft of Palestinian land, the Israeli government gave itself the power to take over all land owned by Palestinians who were not present on their property at a certain date.
UN Security Council Resolution 446 says the practices of Israel in building settlements are illegal. Despite that, Tel Aviv continues with its settlement activity.
As an occupying power, Israel has no authority to implement this law in East Jerusalem, which is recognized by the international community as illegally occupied land. Having illegally confiscated the hotel, the Israeli government sold it in 1985 to Irving Moskovitz, a Jewish-American billionaire who is also a fervent supporter of Israeli settlement in the occupied Palestinian territories and a backer of the extremist settlers group Ateret Kohenim, Crown of the Temple Priests. Moskowitz's plan is to build 20 apartments for Israeli settlers on the site where the hotel once stood.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also condemned the Israeli action as a disturbing development.
The European Union High Representative Catherine Ashton was more forthright in her condemnation, saying that settlements were illegal under international law and that the European Union did not recognize the annexation of East Jerusalem by Israel. The UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon also denounced the demolition. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has tried to distance the Israeli government from what has happened, saying it was carried out by private individuals in accordance with Israeli law. However, it was Netanyahu's government which approved Moskowitz's plan in June 2009, arousing the ire of the Obama administration at the time.
The Israeli government is totally derailed from the norms and ethics of international relations. These Israeli policies are pushing Palestinians and Israelis by force towards bloodshed, towards escalation, towards violence, as if they're calling for it.
Moskowitz's plans do not stop at the demolition of the Shepherd Hotel. He also wishes to demolish Palestinian houses in the surrounding area and build 200 more apartments for settlers. While condemnation of the demolition has come from all sides, this is very unlikely to have any impact on Israel's policy. The demolition seems to have been deliberately carried out when the eyes of the world and the United States in particular were elsewhere, on the shooting of Congresswoman Giffords in Arizona. This has ensured that it has received very little media coverage. Secondly, while the United States and the EU have been willing to verbally condemn the demolition, they are not willing to take any punitive action against Israel, as Israel and its supporters know well. There is no talk of sanctions or diplomatic measures, and Israel knows that the United States will veto any condemnatory resolution by the Security Council. Neither will the United States and the European Union take action against individuals and organizations in their countries who finance and support Israeli settlement building. Irving Moskowitz can rest assured that the United States government, for all its criticism of the demolition of the Shepherd Hotel and the settlement building generally, will not bring any charges against him for his actions, even though his purchase of the Shepherd Hotel from the Israeli government and his destruction of it are both illegal under international law. The fact that Moskowitz was the top contributor to the election campaign of the chairwoman of the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee shows the depth of the ties between the financiers of illegal Israeli settlement and the U.S. government.
We should not be doubling down on a failed Middle East policy by pressuring Israel to make further concessions, including on Jerusalem, Israel's undivided capital.
Instead of standing up for international law, the US government wages war on the British charity Interpol, which it has categorized as a specially designated global terrorist for the crime of alleviating the suffering of poor Palestinians. In Britain, Moskowitz's counterpart is Poju Zabludowicz, another billionaire businessman who has invested heavily in Israeli settlements and who has also been an important donor to the Conservative Party and to David Cameron's campaign to become leader of that party.
Oborn claimed that 80% of the Conservative MPs belong to the Conservative Friends of Israel lobby group, which has donated around £10 million to the party in the last few years.
In Israel recently, the Christian evangelical television station God TV took part in a project to plant trees on land in the Negev desert stolen from the Bedouin Arab minority, with the aim of forcing the Bedouin out of that area.
The Lord's saying to us, the God TV family, prepare the land, and this is the land that needs preparing. Well, wonderful viewers, it is really a privilege to finish this program by us being able to...
God TV is owned by a company based in the UK called the Angel Foundation. But once again, this company is safe in the knowledge that it will avoid prosecution for its actions. The United States and Europe have declared their opposition to settlement activity time and again, and have been vociferous in their condemnation of the latest outrage, but their fine words are not matched by their actions. It is time that they stopped shedding crocodile tears and took action against those responsible for ongoing takeover and ethnic cleansing of Palestine.